Sign here, and you forfeit any claim to the Whitmore estate. The lawyer's pen hovered over the document like a guillotine blade waiting to drop. Around the mahogany conference table, 7 pairs of eyes watched me with expressions ranging from barely concealed disgust to outright contempt. My Aunt Victoria's diamond rings caught the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the law office. Each stone probably worth more than what they assumed I earned in a year. My name is Lily Chen, and I'm 28 years old. I never imagined that showing up to my grandfather's will reading in a simple black dress and worn flats would be treated like a criminal offense. But here I was, being asked to sign away my inheritance before anyone even read the will, simply because I looked like I didn't belong. "We're waiting," my Uncle Richard said, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against the polished table. His tailored suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Some of us have actual business to attend to." I looked at the document in front of me. A release form. A legal way to erase me from the family before Grandpa Edward's final wishes could even be revealed. "Why would I sign this?" I asked quietly, my hands folded calmly in my lap. Victoria leaned forward, her perfectly highlighted hair not moving an inch. "Because, dear, let's be honest about what you are." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "You're an embarrassment. Look at you. That dress is off the rack. Those shoes have seen better days. And that bag." She wrinkled her nose at my simple canvas tote. "You clearly can't manage money. Father's estate shouldn't be wasted on someone who'll just squander it." My cousin Brandon snorted. "She'd probably blow it all at Target." The others laughed. That particular brand of rich people laughter that sounds more like breaking glass than joy. I'd seen this coming. Small signs over the past year. Ever since Grandpa Edward had gotten sick. The way they'd stopped including me in family events. The comments about my lifestyle choices when I showed up to his hospital room in jeans instead of designer clothes. The whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. They thought I was poor. They thought I was struggling. They thought I was beneath them. And I'd let them think it. "The estate is worth approximately $47 million, the lawyer, Mr. Peterson, said uncomfortably. He was clearly not enjoying this family drama in his office. "Perhaps we should proceed with reading the will before—" "Oh, please," my Aunt Margaret cut him off. She was Victoria's sister, equally dripping in jewelry and judgment. We all know Father was getting senile at the end. He probably felt sorry for poor little Lily, working her little job, living in her little apartment. She said little like it was a communicable disease. "I work at a nonprofit," I said evenly, which was technically true. "Exactly," Richard jumped in. "You make what, 30,000 a year? Maybe 40? You don't understand wealth. You don't understand legacy. You'd probably donate it all to some ridiculous cause and end up on food stamps within a year." Brandon leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Remember when she showed up to the charity gala in a dress from Macy's? I thought Mother was going to have a stroke." More laughter. More contempt. I thought about Grandpa Edward in his final weeks. How he'd held my hand and whispered, "They don't see you, Lily. They never did. But I always have." How he'd smiled when I told him I understood. How he'd made me promise not to reveal anything until the right moment. "This is for your own good," Victoria said, pushing the release form closer to me. "Take the $50,000 we're offering, walk away with your dignity intact, and let the adults handle the estate. You'll thank us later." $50,000. They were trying to buy out my inheritance for roughly 0.1% of its value. "And if I don't sign?" I asked. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Richard's face hardened. "Then we'll contest the will. We'll argue that Father wasn't in his right mind. We'll drag this through courts for years. Do you have money for lawyers, Lily? Do you have resources to fight us? We'll bury you in legal fees until you're begging to settle." "We're trying to spare you that," Margaret added, her voice syrupy with fake concern. "We're trying to be kind." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "I really must insist we proceed with—" "She'll sign," Victoria declared. because she's smart enough to know when she's outmatched. I looked at each of them, at their designer clothes and expensive watches, at their manicures and their arrogance, at the absolute certainty in their eyes that they'd already won, and I almost felt sorry for them. "No," I said simply. The room went silent. "Excuse me?" Richard's voice was dangerous. I said no. I'm not signing anything. I folded my hands and met his glare with a calm I'd spent years perfecting. "I think we should hear what Grandpa Edward actually wanted." "You stupid girl," Victoria hissed, her mask of politeness finally cracking. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? We will destroy you. We have the best lawyers money can buy." "I'm sure you do," I said, and allowed myself the smallest smile. Something in my tone made Mr. Peterson look at me sharply. Something in my expression made the lawyer's eyes narrow with sudden interest, but my family was too blinded by their own contempt to notice. "Fine," Richard spat. "Let's read the damn will. And when you walk out of here with nothing, don't come crying to us." Mr. Peterson opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope with Grandpa Edward's seal. His hands shook slightly as he broke it open. I noticed he kept glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. The family settled back in their chairs, confident and smug, already planning, I'm sure, how they'd divide up an estate they thought I had no real claim to. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea who I actually was. And as Mr. Peterson began to read, his voice slightly unsteady, I thought about all the times they'd dismissed me, ignored me, treated me like I was nothing. If you're enjoying this story of how the tables were about to turn, don't forget to subscribe, because what my family was about to discover would change everything they thought they knew. The first words out of Mr. Peterson's mouth made Victoria's face go pale. And that was just the beginning. I, Edward James Whitmore, being of sound mind and body. Mr. Peterson's voice filled the conference room, but Lily barely heard the standard legal language. She was watching her family's faces instead, the way confidence radiated from them like heat from asphalt in summer. They truly believed this was a formality, that Grandpa Edward's will would follow traditional patterns, the bulk of the estate divided among his 3 children, with maybe a token amount for the grandchildren. They had no idea. To my daughter, Victoria Whitmore Sterling, I leave my collection of vintage wines, valued at approximately $200,000, and the beach house in the Hamptons. Victoria's smile froze. The beach house was nice, sure, but it was the smallest property in the portfolio. And a wine collection? She didn't even drink. To my son, Richard Whitmore, I leave my shares in Whitmore Manufacturing, approximately 15% of the company, valued at $8 million. Richard sat up straighter, but his expression was confused. 15%? Edward had owned 60% of the company. Where was the rest going? To my daughter, Margaret Whitmore Chen, I leave the property in Aspen and my art collection, valued together at approximately $12 million. Margaret's face went red. What about the Manhattan penthouse? What about the... Please let me finish, Mr. Peterson said. And there was something in his voice now, a tension that made everyone in the room shift uncomfortably. Lily remained perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her face neutral. But inside, she could feel her heart racing. This was it. The moment Grandpa Edward had planned for, had made her promise to stay quiet about. The remainder of my estate, Mr. Chi, Peterson continued, his voice growing stronger, including the Manhattan penthouse, the lake house in Vermont, the property in Napa Valley, my remaining shares in Whitmore Manufacturing, and all liquid assets, I leave to my granddaughter, Lily Chen. The silence was deafening. Then chaos erupted. "What?" Victoria shrieked, standing so fast her chair toppled backward. "That's impossible. That can't be legal." "This is insane," Richard shouted, slamming his hand on the table. He was clearly not in his right mind. $40 million to her? Brandon looked like he'd been slapped. This is a joke. This has to be a joke. Margaret was already dialing her phone. I'm calling our lawyer right now. We're contesting this immediately. Through it all, Lily sat quietly, absorbing their rage like a stone absorbs rain, untouched, unmoved. Mr. Peterson raised his voice. There's more. More? Victoria's voice was shrill. What more could there possibly be? The lawyer pulled out another document. Mr. Whitmore anticipated this reaction. He had himself evaluated by 3 separate psychiatrists in the month before his death. All 3 certified him as being of completely sound mind. He also made video testimony explaining his reasoning. Would you like me to play it? Yes, Lily said quietly. It was the first word she'd spoken since the reading began. Everyone turned to stare at her. You knew, Richard said slowly, his eyes narrowing. You knew about this. Grandpa Edward told me he was leaving me something, Lily said calmly. I didn't know how much. Liar, Victoria spat. You manipulated him. You spent time with him when he was vulnerable, and you manipulated a sick old man. I visited him, Lily corrected. Every week. Sometimes twice a week. I sat with him. Talked with him. Actually listened when he spoke. Because you wanted his money, Margaret accused. When was the last time any of you visited him? Lily asked, her voice still quiet but with an edge now. Before he got sick, I mean. Before you knew he was dying. The silence answered her question. Brandon found his voice. This is bullshit. Complete bullshit. You come in here with your thrift store clothes and your fake humble act and you steal our inheritance. The video, Mr. Peterson interrupted, setting up a laptop. I think you should all see this. The screen flickered to life, and there was Grandpa Edward. Thinner than Lily remembered, his skin papery and pale, but his eyes were sharp and clear. The date stamp showed it was recorded just 3 weeks before his death. If you're watching this, Edward began, his voice hoarse but firm, then I'm gone, and my children are probably losing their minds right about now. Even from beyond the grave, he knew them so well. Let me be very clear, Edward continued. I am of sound mind. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm leaving the bulk of my estate to Lily, because she's the only one who deserves it. Dad, Victoria whispered to the screen, tears streaming down her face. But Lily noticed they were tears of rage, not grief. Victoria, Richard, Margaret, I love you. You're my children. But you've become everything I despised about the world I was born into. You care about status, about appearance, about what other people think. You judge people by their bank accounts and their zip codes. You've taught your children to do the same. Brandon's face flushed red. But Lily... Edward's expression softened. Lily never asked me for anything. She visited because she wanted to see me, not because she wanted something from me. She listened to my stories. She laughed at my jokes. She treated me like a person, not like a wallet with legs. Lily felt her throat tighten. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry during this, but hearing his voice again. More than that, Edward continued, Lily reminds me of who I was before the money, before the success. She has integrity, she has values, and she understands that wealth is a responsibility, not just a privilege. He leaned closer to the camera. And for those of you planning to contest this will, to drag this through courts, to claim I wasn't in my right mind, let me save you some money. I've made sure this will is ironclad. 3 psychiatrists, video testimony, witnesses, everything. You won't win. You'll just waste money on lawyers and make yourselves look even worse than you already do. The video ended. The conference room was silent, except for Margaret's quiet sobbing, though whether from grief or fury Lily couldn't tell. Then Richard stood up slowly. When he spoke, his voice was cold and controlled. which was somehow more frightening than his earlier shouting. "You think you've won," he said, looking directly at Lily. "You think a video and some documents make you untouchable. But let me tell you something about family, little girl. You may have the money now, but you'll never have us. You'll never be welcome at family events. Your name will be poison in our circles. Every business connection, every social opportunity, every door my father's name could have opened for you. We'll make sure they slam shut. We'll make your life hell," Victoria added, her voice venomous. "You may be rich on paper, but you'll be alone, isolated. We'll make sure everyone knows what you really are, a manipulative little gold digger who took advantage of an old man's loneliness." Brandon laughed, a harsh sound. "Good luck managing that estate. Good luck dealing with the board at Whitmore Manufacturing. You think they're going to take orders from someone who shops at TJ Maxx?" Margaret wiped her eyes. "You're not family anymore. As far as we're concerned, you don't exist." Mr. Peterson looked uncomfortable. "I must advise you that making threats—" "We're not threatening," Richard said smoothly. "We're simply explaining reality. Lily has won the money, but she's lost everything else. And in our world, connections matter more than cash." They began gathering their things, preparing to leave. United in their hatred now, bonded by their shared contempt for the woman who had stolen what they believed was rightfully theirs. Lily sat quietly through all of it. She'd expected this. Grandpa Edward had warned her. "They'll try to hurt you," he'd said. "They'll try to destroy you socially, professionally. They'll use every weapon they have. Can you handle that?" She'd told him yes, but sitting here now, facing their collective fury, she felt the weight of what was coming. As they filed toward the door, Victoria paused and turned back. "I hope it was worth it, Lily. I hope $40 million is enough to buy yourself some friends, because you're going to need them." The door slammed behind them, leaving Lily alone with Mr. Peterson. The lawyer was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "Miss Chen, I should tell you. Your grandfather left me with something else. Another envelope. He said to give it to you only after they'd left." He pulled out a small envelope with her name on it in Grandpa Edward's shaky handwriting. Lily opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a short note. "Lily, my dear girl, by now they've shown you exactly who they are. Don't let them intimidate you. You're stronger than you know, and you have resources they can't imagine. Remember what we talked about. Remember who you really are. And when the time is right, remind them. They think they know everything. They think they figured out the game. They have no idea what's about to hit them. All my love, Grandpa Edward P.S. Check your email. The password is your mother's birthday." Lily stared at the note, her mind racing. She pulled out her phone and opened her email. There was a new message from an encrypted address, sent on a timer to arrive exactly at this moment. Her finger hovered over it. What had Grandpa Edward planned? What did he mean by who you really are? But more importantly, what were her family members doing right now? Because she knew them. They weren't just going to accept this. They were already planning something, already strategizing how to destroy her. They thought they held all the cards. They thought they knew all her weaknesses. They had absolutely no idea that everything they believed about Lily Chen was a carefully constructed lie, and they were about to find out just how catastrophic their underestimation would be. Lily waited until Mr. Peterson left the conference room before opening the encrypted email. Her hands were steadier now, the initial shock of her family's venom already metabolizing into something else, something sharper. The email contained a single attachment, a PDF labeled "The Full Picture." She opened it. The first page was a corporate document. Chen Capital Management, private equity firm, founded 2019. Assets under management, $2.3 billion. Chief Executive Officer, Lily Chen. Her breath caught, not from surprise, but from seeing it all laid out so plainly. the truth she'd hidden for 5 years, the empire she'd built while her family assumed she was struggling in a cramped apartment, clipping coupons and wearing clearance rack clothing. The document continued. Chen Capital's portfolio. Majority stakes in 15 companies, including 3 that supplied directly to Whitmore Manufacturing. Real estate holdings across 6 states. Venture capital investments in 42 startups, 12 of which had already gone public. Her personal net worth, $847 million. Grandpa Edward had known. Of course he'd known. The note continued on the second page. Lily, I've known about Chen Capital since year 1. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when a venture capital firm with your mother's maiden name started making brilliant investments in sectors I'd taught you about since you were 12? I've been so proud watching you build something real, something that matters. You did it without the family name, without their connections, without their approval. You proved you didn't need them. But now they need to be taught a lesson. They need to understand that money doesn't make you better than others. Character does. And they've shown they have none. The tools you need are in this document. Use them wisely. Use them well. Make them remember that underestimating people is the most expensive mistake anyone can make. Lily scrolled through the rest of the file. Grandpa Edward had been thorough. Financial records showing her Uncle Richard's company was barely profitable, kept afloat only by contracts with companies Lily's firm had controlling interest in. Documentation of Victoria's lifestyle being funded almost entirely by loans against her expected inheritance. Loans that were now significantly underwater. Evidence that Brandon's successful consulting firm was actually hemorrhaging money. They weren't just wealthy people who'd inherit more wealth. They were people living on credit and expectation, their entire lives leveraged against money they didn't have yet. Money that was now hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Miss Chen, this is Marcus Webb. Your grandfather retained me as personal counsel 6 months ago. I represent you now. Don't respond to any family communications without me. We need to meet. Tomorrow 9 a.m. my office. Address below. An ally, just like the script required. But this wasn't just any attorney. Marcus Webb was a legend in estate litigation. If her family wanted a legal war, they'd just discovered she had a nuclear arsenal. Another buzz. This time, an email from her assistant at Chen Capital. Lily, 7 media outlets have requested interviews about the Whitmore estate. Also, Richard Whitmore's secretary called trying to schedule a meeting with you about family business. How should I respond? So it was starting. The campaign to isolate her, to destroy her reputation, to make her life hell, just like Richard had promised. Lily stood and gathered her things. She caught her reflection in the conference room's window. The simple black dress, the worn flats, the canvas bag, the costume she'd maintained for 5 years because Grandpa Edward had asked her to. Because he'd wanted to see who in the family would value her for herself, not for her balance sheet. Well, now she knew. And now they would too. 3 days later, Lily sat in Marcus Webb's corner office, which offered a view of downtown that cost approximately what most people earned in a decade. The attorney was a distinguished black man in his early 60s, with silver hair and the kind of presence that made judges nervous. They've filed the contest, Marcus said, sliding papers across his mahogany desk. All 3 siblings, joint action. They're claiming undue influence, diminished capacity, and my personal favorite, that you isolated Edward from his family to manipulate him. Creative, Lily murmured, scanning the filing. It won't work, Marcus assured her. Edward was thorough, but it will be expensive for them. Very expensive. Legal fees for a case like this against evidence this strong? He smiled. They're looking at $500,000 in costs minimum, possibly more. Money they don't actually have, Lily said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You've done your homework. My grandfather did. She pulled out her phone and showed him the documents Edward had compiled. Richard's company is struggling. Victoria's living on credit. Margaret's art collection is worth half what she claims because she bought fake pieces from a dealer who's now under investigation. The attorney's expression shifted from professional interest to something approaching delight. Your grandfather was a strategic genius. He wanted them to expose themselves, Lily said. He knew they'd attack. He counted on it. And while they're spending money they don't have on a lawsuit they can't win. Marcus leaned back in his chair. What are you planning? Lily didn't answer directly. Tell me about Whitmore Manufacturing's board meeting next week. You own the controlling shares now, 45%. Richard has 15%, and the remaining 40% is split among smaller investors who typically vote together. Do those smaller investors know who I am? They know you're Edward's granddaughter. They don't know anything else. Good. Lily's smile was slight but sharp. Let's keep it that way. For now. That evening, Lily finally returned to her apartment. The real one, not the studio her family thought she lived in. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Manhattan. The decor was minimalist but expensive, each piece carefully chosen, nothing ostentatious. This was where she actually lived when she wasn't playing the role of struggling nonprofit worker. Her phone rang. Victoria. Lily let it go to voicemail. 3 minutes later, the message notification appeared. She played it on speaker while pouring herself a glass of wine. Lily, it's Victoria. The voice was dripping with false warmth, a complete reversal from 3 days ago. I think we all got a bit emotional at the lawyer's office. Family grief, you understand. I'd love to meet for lunch tomorrow. Just the two of us. Clear the air. We're still family, after all, and I think we can work something out that's beneficial for everyone. Call me back. Lily deleted the message. 20 minutes later, Richard called. She let that go to voicemail too. Lily, Richard here. Listen, I may have come on a bit strong the other day. This inheritance situation has everyone stressed, as you can imagine. But I've been thinking, you're going to need guidance managing these assets. Whitmore Manufacturing alone is complex, and you don't have experience in manufacturing or corporate governance. Why don't we meet? I can help you understand what you're dealing with, protect you from making costly mistakes. The condescension was barely masked. Costly mistakes. Protect you. They still saw her as an idiot child who'd stumbled into money she couldn't handle. Perfect. A text from Brandon. Aunt Lily, can we talk? I think my dad's being crazy. You seem cool. Maybe we could grab coffee? The transparency was almost insulting. They were trying every angle. Fake reconciliation, false concern, attempted alliance with the cool younger generation. All of it designed to get close to her, to find leverage, to discover weaknesses they could exploit. Lily responded to none of them. Instead, she opened her laptop and began working. Chen Capital had investments to manage, deals to close, a business empire that ran smoothly because she was very, very good at what she did. Her family thought she'd be drowning in the responsibilities of the inheritance. They had no idea she'd been managing 10 times that amount for years. Around midnight, her personal assistant Sarah called. We have a situation. What kind? Victoria Whitmore Sterling gave an interview to the Manhattan Chronicle. It's going live tomorrow morning. Lily's jaw tightened. What did she say? She's painting herself as the grieving daughter, concerned about her father's vulnerable final months. She implies you isolated him, that his decision was out of character, that the family is devastated but exploring all legal options to honor his true wishes. So she's building a public narrative. A sympathetic one. Poor wealthy family, manipulated by conniving granddaughter. The comments section is already filling up with people taking her side. Lily closed her eyes. This was the play she'd expected. Turn public opinion against her while the legal battle raged. Make her toxic. Make her isolated. Make her desperate enough to settle. Sarah. Lily said calmly. Do you remember that profile piece Forbes wanted to do on Chen Capital? The one I've been declining for 2 years? Yes. Tell them I'm ready, but on my terms. I want the focus on the company's success, the investments, the growth. And Sarah? I want them to run it the same day the Chronicle publishes Victoria's interview. There was a pause. Then Sarah laughed. You're going to let them find out through Forbes? They want to play in public? Lily's voice was quiet but firm. Then let's play in public. The next morning, Victoria's interview went live at 6 a.m. By 7 a.m., it had been shared across social media, with hashtags like Tacharn family betrayal and respect, the elders trending. The narrative was simple and effective. Poor rich family, betrayed by ungrateful relative. At 9 a.m., Forbes published their piece, The Quiet Billionaire, How Lily Chen Built an Empire While Nobody Was Looking. The article was devastating in its thoroughness. Chen Capital's track record, the successful investments, the companies under her portfolio, her reputation in venture capital circles as one of the sharpest minds in private equity. Quotes from CEOs she'd backed, from investors she'd partnered with, from industry leaders who called her brilliant, visionary, and ruthlessly strategic. And buried in paragraph 12, Chen, who recently inherited a significant portion of the Whitmore estate, is already worth an estimated $847 million through her own business ventures, making the inheritance, while substantial, only a small percentage of her total wealth. By 10 a.m., Victoria's sympathetic narrative had collapsed. The comments shifted. Wait, she's already a billionaire and they're acting like she manipulated their dad for money? She doesn't need their inheritance, lol. The family sounds greedy, not her. By noon, 3 news outlets had picked up the Forbes piece. By 2 p.m., it was trending higher than Victoria's interview. Lily's phone exploded with messages from her family. Furious, panicked, desperate. She ignored them all. Because this was just the opening move. They'd tried to destroy her reputation. They'd failed. Now came the part where she showed them exactly what happened when you underestimated Lily Chen. And the Whitmore Manufacturing Board meeting was in 4 days. The Whitmore Manufacturing Boardroom occupied the entire 20th floor of a building that Edward Whitmore had commissioned in 1987. Portraits of company founders lined the walls. Stern-faced men in suits from decades past, all watching as the current board assembled for what they believed would be a routine transition meeting. Lily arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than the entire wardrobe her family assumed she owned. Her hair was pulled back severely. Diamond studs, real ones, not the cubic zirconia they'd assumed, caught the morning light. She looked every inch the CEO she actually was. Marcus Webb accompanied her, carrying a leather briefcase that seemed ominously heavy. The board members, 10 men and 2 women, all over 50, all visibly uncomfortable, stood as she entered. They'd read the Forbes article. They knew who she was now. The dynamic had shifted overnight from Edward's charity case granddaughter to billionaire venture capitalist who now controls our company. Richard arrived exactly at 9 a.m., Victoria and Margaret flanking him like generals preparing for battle. They stopped dead when they saw Lily, the suit, the bearing, the attorney who'd destroyed careers across 3 decades. You've got to be kidding me, Brandon muttered, trailing behind his father. Victoria's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Lily, that's Marchesa, isn't it? That suit? Tom Ford, Lily corrected mildly. Please, everyone sit. The authority in her voice made it clear this wasn't a request. The board members sat immediately. Her family hesitated, then followed. But Richard's jaw was clenched so tight Lily could see the muscle jumping. Thank you all for coming, Lily began, standing at the head of the table where her grandfather had stood for 40 years. I know the past week has been turbulent. My grandfather's passing, the will, the media attention. I appreciate your patience during this transition. Transition? Richard interrupted. Lily, We need to discuss. You'll have time to speak, Uncle Richard. Her voice was pleasant but edged with steel. Right now I'm speaking. One of the board members, Gerald Hayes, CFO, cleared his throat. Miss Chen, we've all seen the Forbes article. Your accomplishments are impressive, but Whitmore Manufacturing is a legacy company with specific needs and culture. We're concerned about whether I'm qualified? Lily finished. Let me address that directly. Marcus, the first folder, please. The attorney distributed bound documents to each board member. Richard grabbed his and began flipping through it, his face shifting from confusion to horror with each page. What you're looking at, Lily explained calmly, is a complete financial analysis of Whitmore Manufacturing's performance over the past 5 years. Declining profit margins, outdated manufacturing processes, loss of contracts to more innovative competitors. The company my grandfather built is dying slowly, and it's been dying for years. That's not, Victoria started. Page 12, Lily cut her off. The Bronson account, which we lost 18 months ago. They cited quality control issues and delivery delays. Page 19, the Mitchell contract, terminated for similar reasons. Page 23, We know we've had challenges, Gerald interrupted, defensive now. Every manufacturing company has faced difficulties in the current economy. True, Lily agreed. But not every manufacturing company has leadership that's been systematically embezzling funds. The room went silent. Richard shot to his feet. What did you just say? Sit down, Uncle Richard. Lily's voice was quiet, but something in it made him slowly lower himself back into his chair. Marcus, the second folder. This distribution was slower. Board members opened their folders with visible dread. Inside were financial records, bank transfers, shell company documentation. A paper trail that told a story of systematic theft spanning 3 years. Richard, Lily said, and her voice was sad now, genuinely disappointed. You've been funneling company funds through a consulting firm that doesn't actually exist. Sterling Solutions, LLC. Registered in Delaware. No employees, no office, no actual business operations. Just a bank account that's received $2. $3 million from Whitmore Manufacturing over 3 years for consulting services that were never rendered. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Margaret had gone gray. That's a lie, Richard said, but his voice shook. You've fabricated. The bank records are real, Marcus said calmly, as is the testimony from the accountant who processed the transfers. She's already agreed to cooperate with investigators in exchange for immunity. You're insane, Richard tried again. Dad put me in charge of operations because he trusted me. This is you trying to... Grandpa Edward knew, Lily interrupted. He knew for 6 months before he died. He hired forensic accountants. He documented everything. He was going to fire you, but then he got sick, and he decided to handle it differently. She pulled out another document. This is a letter he wrote to the board, dated 2 weeks before his death. He explains that he discovered the embezzlement, that he compiled evidence, and that he was leaving control of the company to me specifically because I was the only family member with both the integrity and the skill to fix what you'd broken. Richard's face had gone from red to white. If he knew, why didn't he go to the police? Because you're his son, Lily said softly, and he hoped that losing control of the company would be punishment enough. He hoped you'd learn from it. She turned to the board. But I'm not my grandfather. I don't have his sentimentality. So here's what happens next. Richard, you're fired, effective immediately. Your position as COO is terminated. You'll repay every cent you stole plus interest, or I'll have Marcus file criminal charges. You have 48 hours to decide. You can't. The board has to approve. I own 45% of the company, Lily said. And according to the charter, any owner with more than 40% can terminate executive leadership with cause. Embezzlement is cause. The board can vote to override me, but... She looked around the table. I suspect they won't. Dead silence. Then Gerald Hayes shook his head. No, we won't. One by one, the other board members agreed. Some looked relieved. Some looked angry. None of them defended Richard. Victoria stood up, her chair scraping loudly. This is a witch hunt. You're destroying this family because you're jealous and vindictive and— Aunt Victoria, Lily interrupted. Sit down. We're not done. Something in Lily's expression made Victoria slowly sink back into her seat. While we're addressing financial improprieties, Lily continued, we should discuss the Whitmore Foundation, the charitable organization that Grandpa Edward established 40 years ago. The one you've been chairing for the past decade, Aunt Victoria. Victoria's eyes widened. Marcus, folder 3. More documents. These showed a pattern of administrative expenses that consumed 70% of the foundation's annual budget. Luxury hotels for fundraising events, first-class flights, designer clothing purchased as professional attire for donor meetings. A foundation credit card used at Bergdorf Goodman, Saks, and restaurants where the average meal cost more than the foundation donated to actual causes. Last year, Lily said, her voice hard now, the Whitmore Foundation raised $3.2 million in donations. It distributed $890,000 to actual charitable causes. The rest went to operational expenses, most of which benefited you personally. Those were legitimate business expenses, Victoria protested, but her voice was weak. The $47,000 shopping trip to Paris was a business expense? That was a fundraising trip. You raised $0 in Paris. You attended Fashion Week. Lily pulled out a magazine. There was Victoria in the front row of a runway show, wearing an outfit purchased with foundation funds. You treated the foundation like your personal bank account. Margaret found her voice. Lily, this is inappropriate. Family matters should be handled privately, not in front of the board. Family matters? Lily's laugh was bitter. You three made it very clear last week that I'm not family, remember? You were going to make my life hell, isolate me, destroy my reputation. Those were your words, Uncle Richard. If you're watching this wondering how people who seemed so powerful fell so fast, make sure you're subscribed, because the consequences were only just beginning. Here's what's going to happen, Lily continued. Victoria, you're removed as chair of the Whitmore Foundation, effective immediately. The IRS has already been contacted about the irregularities. Whether they investigate further depends on whether you cooperate with repaying what you took. Victoria was crying now, mascara running down her face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and humiliation. Margaret. Lily turned to her remaining aunt. You're the only one who didn't actively steal, so congratulations on that incredibly low bar. But you're also the one who's been pressuring other board members to vote against any changes I propose. You've been calling them, texting them, trying to build a coalition to remove me. Margaret's mouth opened, then closed. It won't work, Lily said simply. Because I'm not just Edward's granddaughter. I'm not just a billionaire who doesn't need this company. I'm someone who actually knows how to run a business, and every person in this room knows it. She looked around the table. I'm proposing a complete restructuring of Whitmore Manufacturing. New leadership, new processes, new focus on innovation and quality. I have detailed plans that Marcus will distribute after this meeting. We can save this company, make it profitable again, and honor what my grandfather built, but only if we cut out the rot. Gerald Hayes spoke up. Miss Chen, what you're proposing? It's aggressive, but looking at these numbers, looking at what's been happening. He glared at Richard. I think it's necessary. You have my support. Around the table, heads nodded. Richard, Victoria, and Margaret sat isolated, their carefully built power structure crumbling in real time. Richard made one last desperate play. The lawsuit, he said hoarsely. We're still contesting the will. You might not have that inheritance for long. Lily smiled, and it was not a kind smile. About that. Marcus, would you like to explain? The attorney stood. This morning we filed a countersuit for malicious prosecution, given that Mr. Whitmore's mental competency was certified by 3 independent psychiatrists, and given the video testimony, your contest has no merit. It's a harassment suit, pure and simple. We're seeking legal fees, damages, and sanctions. Your lawyer estimated you'd spend $500,000 fighting the will, Lily added. Our estimate is higher, closer to $700,000 by the time this ends. Money you don't have, money you've been borrowing against an inheritance that's not coming. Victoria's face crumpled. You're destroying us, your own family. No, Lily said quietly. You destroyed yourselves. You stole. You lied. You treated people like they were beneath you based on their bank accounts and their clothes. And when Grandpa Edward tried to teach you a lesson, when he tried to show you that kindness and integrity matter more than money, you responded with cruelty. She gathered her papers. I gave you a choice last week. Sign a release, take a settlement, walk away with some dignity. You chose to fight. You chose to threaten me. You chose to try to destroy me publicly. She paused. That was a mistake. Richard's phone buzzed, then Victoria's, then Margaret's. They looked at their screens and went pale. You're probably seeing the news, Lily said. About an hour ago, the Manhattan Chronicle, yes, the same one that ran your sympathetic interview, Aunt Victoria, published a follow-up piece. This one includes all the evidence of embezzlement, foundation mismanagement, and the frivolous lawsuit. They also have quotes from several board members about Richard's mismanagement. You leaked this, Richard whispered. I gave them the truth, Lily corrected. What they chose to do with it was their decision. Brandon stood up suddenly, his chair toppling backward. You're a monster, he spat. You've destroyed my father, humiliated my aunt, ruined everything. Your father embezzled $2. $3 million, Lily cut him off. Your aunt misappropriated charitable donations. I didn't make them do those things. I just stopped letting them get away with it. We're still your family. Then maybe you should have treated me like it, Lily said, and for the first time, her voice cracked with genuine emotion. Maybe you should have visited Grandpa Edward before he was dying. Maybe you should have valued people for who they are, not what they can give you. Maybe... She stopped, took a breath. But you didn't. And now you're facing consequences. That's not cruelty. That's justice. The board meeting ended in chaos. Richard stormed out, already on the phone with his lawyer. Victoria fled in tears. Margaret left silently, her head down, the fight gone out of her. Lily remained at the head of the table, surrounded by board members who wanted to discuss the restructuring plan, who had questions about leadership, who suddenly saw her as their salvation instead of their problem. But through the glass wall of the conference room, she could see her uncle in the hallway, his face twisted with rage, pointing at her, shouting into his phone. The war wasn't over, not yet. But the first battle had been won decisively. And Richard Whitmore had just learned what Grandpa Edward had known all along. Underestimating Lily Chen was the most expensive mistake anyone could make. 6 months later, Lily stood in the same boardroom where she'd dismantled her family's empire, but everything had changed. Whitmore Manufacturing's quarterly report showed a 12% profit increase, the first growth in 3 years. New contracts had been signed with 4 major clients who'd previously taken their business elsewhere. The company had been featured in Industry Week magazine as a turnaround success story. Gerald Hayes presented the numbers with barely concealed pride. Our quality control scores are up 35%. Delivery times have improved by 40%. Client satisfaction ratings are the highest they've been in a decade. He looked at Lily with genuine respect. Miss Chen, what you've accomplished in 6 months is remarkable. We've accomplished, Lily corrected. This wasn't me alone. It was everyone in this room willing to do the hard work of change. But they all knew the truth. She'd brought in new management, implemented lean manufacturing processes, invested in updated equipment, and rebuilt relationships with clients who'd written the company off as a lost cause. She'd done it while simultaneously running Chen Capital, which had just closed its largest fund yet, $4.2 billion. The Forbes article had been updated with a new headline: Lily Chen, the billionaire who saved her family's legacy while they tried to destroy her. After the board meeting ended, Marcus Webb approached with an envelope. The settlement came through. Richard signed this morning. Lily opened it. Richard had agreed to repay the $2.3 million in embezzled funds over 10 years, with interest. In exchange, she wouldn't press criminal charges. He'd also dropped the will contest, officially and permanently. And Victoria? The IRS investigation concluded. She's paying back taxes and penalties on the foundation misuse, about $340,000 total. She's also banned from serving on any charitable board in New York State for 5 years. Margaret? Quietly declared bankruptcy last month. Turns out those art pieces she bragged about? Mostly forgeries. She's selling the Aspen property to cover debts. Lily felt no triumph in their downfall. Just a quiet sense of completion, like watching a storm finally pass. There's something else, Marcus said carefully. Brandon Whitmore has been trying to reach you. He's called my office 6 times this week. What does he want? He says he wants to apologize. They met at a small cafe in Brooklyn, far from the Manhattan power corridors where her family typically operated. Brandon arrived 10 minutes late, looking nothing like the arrogant cousin who'd mocked her clothes 6 months ago. His suit was off the rack. His watch was a Timex, not a Rolex. He'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. He sat down across from her, not quite meeting her eyes. Thank you for seeing me. Lily said nothing, just waited. I've been working, Brandon said finally. Real work, I mean. My consulting firm collapsed after the news broke. All my clients were people Dad had connected me with. And when his reputation tanked, mine went with it. So I got a job at an actual consulting firm, junior analyst. I make $65,000 a year. I have a studio apartment in Queens. I take the subway. He laughed bitterly. 6 months ago, I spent more than that on a watch. I thought I was somebody because of how much money I had access to. Money I didn't earn. Money I didn't deserve. Why are you telling me this? Lily asked quietly. Because you were right. Brandon's voice cracked. Everything you said in that boardroom, about how we treated people, about how we judged you for your clothes and your apartment while you were building something real, about how we had no idea what actual work looked like. He finally met her eyes. I'm not asking for money or a job or anything. I just wanted you to know that some of us are learning. Some of us are trying to be better. Lily studied him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like humility, or at least the beginning of it. How's your father? She asked. Brandon's face darkened. Not well. The repayment plan is killing him financially. He had to sell his apartment, move to New Jersey. He's consulting part-time, but nobody wants to hire someone with his reputation. He's angry all the time. Angry at you, angry at Grandpa, angry at the world. And your mother? She blames everyone but herself. She and Aunt Victoria barely speak to each other. They're both convinced the other one made things worse. Aunt Margaret moved to Florida, I think. Nobody's heard from her in months. The destruction was complete. The family that had once ruled their social circle with arrogance and contempt was scattered, broken, diminished. Do you hate us? Brandon asked suddenly. Lily thought about it. No, she said finally. I'm disappointed. I'm sad that it had to come to this. But hate? That takes too much energy. I'm sorry, Brandon said, and tears were streaming down his face now. I'm so sorry for how we treated you, for what we said, for everything. I accept your apology, Lily said. But Brandon, you need to understand. I didn't destroy your family. Your family destroyed itself. The greed, the contempt, the belief that money made you better than other people. That was always there. I just stopped enabling it. I know, he whispered. I know that now. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Brandon stood. I should go. I needed you to know that not all of us are beyond learning. Some of us are trying. After he left, Lily sat alone with her coffee, watching Brooklyn go about its day. Regular people doing regular things. The kind of people her family had dismissed as beneath them. The kind of people who'd always been more real than the gilded cage her family had built for themselves. That evening, Lily returned to her Tribeca penthouse to find an unexpected visitor waiting in the lobby. Alana Pierce, her grandfather's former housekeeper, now in her 70s, with silver hair and eyes that still sparkled with sharp intelligence. Miss Alana, Lily said warmly, embracing the woman who'd practically raised her during summers at Grandpa Edward's estate. What are you doing here? Your grandfather left something for you, Alana said, pulling a small box from her purse. He told me to give it to you 6 months after the will was read. Said you'd need that long to handle everything else first. Inside was a letter and a small key. Lily opened the letter with trembling hands. My dearest Lily, if you're reading this, then 6 months have passed. 6 months of battles and revelations and probably more family drama than anyone should endure. I'm sorry I put you through this. I'm sorry I couldn't fix my children before I left. But I needed you to see who they really were. I needed them to see who you really are. The key opens a safety deposit box at Metropolitan Trust, Box 847. Inside, you'll find the original deed to the lake house in Vermont, the one where your grandmother and I spent our happiest years. It's yours, completely, not part of the estate, not listed in the will. I transferred it to your name 3 years ago. Go there when you need peace. Go there when the weight of all this becomes too much. Remember that success isn't about the money you make or the battles you win. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. You were kind to an old man when you had nothing to gain from it. You built an empire without losing your soul. You stood up to bullies who had more power than you. Or so they thought. That's the legacy that matters. All my love, always. Grandpa Edward P.S. They're going to write articles about you. Call you ruthless, probably. Don't let them define you. You know who you are. Lily pressed the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Alana squeezed her hand. He was so proud of you, the older woman said softly. He used to tell me, Alana, that girl is going to change the world, and she won't even need my money to do it. 1 year after the will reading, Lily stood on the porch of the Vermont lake house, watching the sun set over water that looked like liquid gold. Chen Capital had just been named one of the most successful private equity firms in the country. Whitmore Manufacturing was thriving under her leadership, providing jobs for 300 families. She'd used part of her inheritance to establish the Edward Whitmore Scholarship Fund, full rides to college for students from underprivileged backgrounds, the kind of students her family would have dismissed as not our kind of people. Richard had finished his first year of repayment and was, by all accounts, working a middle management job and living modestly. Victoria had started volunteering at an actual charity, not running it, just volunteering. Margaret had sent a letter of apology from Florida, asking for nothing in return. Brandon called once a month. He'd been promoted to senior analyst. He was dating someone he met on the subway. He was building a life based on his own merit. They were learning. Slowly. Painfully. But learning. Lily's phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. Another interview request. This one's from 60 Minutes. Should I schedule it? Lily smiled and typed back, Let me think about it. I'm taking the weekend off. She set the phone down and looked out at the lake. The same lake where Grandpa Edward had taught her to fish when she was 8. where he'd told her that true wealth wasn't about money. It was about character, kindness, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you something. "I hope I made you proud," she whispered to the sunset. The wind rustled through the trees, and she could almost hear his voice. "You always did, my dear. You always did." The lesson wasn't complicated. Money doesn't make you better than anyone else. It just reveals who you already are. Give a cruel person wealth, and they'll use it as a weapon. Give a kind person wealth, and they'll use it as a tool to build something meaningful. Lily's family had believed their money made them superior. They'd treated people like props in their own story. And when that money was threatened, when their status was challenged, they'd shown their true colors: ugly, desperate, cruel. But Lily had built her empire on competence, integrity, and genuine care for the people she worked with. When her world was turned upside down, when she was attacked and threatened, she'd responded not with cruelty, but with truth. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming so successful, so grounded, so genuinely good at what you do that their opinions become irrelevant. Her family had tried to make her small. They'd tried to convince her she was nothing without their approval. Instead, she'd proven that she never needed them at all. If you've made it this far in this journey, if you've watched Lily transform from the underestimated granddaughter to the woman who saved her family's legacy while they tried to destroy her, I hope you'll subscribe and share this story. Because the real lesson isn't about money or revenge. It's about knowing your worth even when everyone around you tries to convince you you're worthless. It's about building something real while others build facades. It's about understanding that the people who judge you by your clothes, your car, or your zip code are telling you everything about themselves and nothing about you. Lily Chen walked into that law office wearing a thrift store dress and walked out a victor. Not because she inherited $40 million, but because she'd already built an empire worth 20 times that much through her own brilliance, her own work, her own refusal to become what her family expected. They thought they knew her story. They were wrong, and that's the most expensive mistake anyone can make.